do it.
Hello, and welcome to our weekly LinkedIn Live Leadership Series, Voices of Leadership. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Kathy Eastwood, your host and founder and CEO of E=Y. Each week, we explore the fascinating world of leadership, featuring voices from various generations, industries, and backgrounds. A team's job is really to deliver business results. The role of the leader is to empower, inspire, and enable people and the team to deliver those results. And there's really a repeatable formula to drive that success, the E3 leadership code: express plus engage plus execute, powered by emotions. However, each leader's approach to applying that unique code is different because there's no one way to necessarily lead. It's about being authentic and showing up and leading your teams. So our live sessions aim to showcase these diverse voices of leadership. As we meet each leader, we uncover what drives them, explore their unique leadership styles, their core values, experiences, and really understand how we can then show up. So before we get started, I'm going to ask you all to help us make this very interactive. So in the comments, please share your name, where you're calling from. You can even share your LinkedIn profile if you want to network with other people. And I'm going to ask you a question to start off, because I'll ask you to ask us questions as we go through this. Do you prefer a toaster or a toaster oven? So Andy, don't forget, I'm going to ask you that question too. So I'll get you all ready for that one. All right. So today, I'm really excited to have with us Andy Nelson. Andy's career trajectory is a fascinating one, starting in the bustling world of tech as a leader guiding IT and systems development teams at renowned companies like Target and United Group. His transition from tech to executive coaching was driven by his profound understanding of leadership and his desire to empower others. Andy is an ICF certified executive coach. He's a sought-after keynote speaker and a writer with passion for music. Beyond his professional accolades, Andy's journey as a stage 4 cancer survivor inspires a unique perspective on resilience and authenticity. And I hope we're going to talk a little bit about that resilience, because that is amazing, Andy, the stories that you've told me. And he really brings all that into his coaching sessions. So today, Andy is going to share his invaluable insights on building authenticity and resilience in leadership. And Andy, thank you so much for joining us, because, we met, it's probably about 6 months almost already. And the first day we met, we were just like, blah, 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 blah. We share so many of the same core values. We love coaching, inspiring others. So I'm so excited to have you here. And let me turn it over to you, because I did a short intro, and I'd really love to hear from you, your journey, share with our audience, how you got here and what's really important to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kathy. I'm really excited to be here. As you say, we've just met 6 months ago, you and I, but I feel like we've kind of known each other forever, one of those, business relationships. And I am just thrilled to be here and to share part of my story. Intro was great. I would just add a couple of quick things. I mean, what's most important to me, honestly, is that we maintain humanity and human connection in all that we do. Technology, leadership, achieving business goals, all extremely important. And, I and other leaders have all kinds of stories about that, which I'm happy to dive into. But it's part of what I've loved about working with you, Kathy, and your company, is that this tie into authenticity and vulnerability is really important while we accomplish stuff together, right? And I feel like in this time in the world right now, working together is such an important thing. And I'm just honored to have part of that role. As a leader, like you say, through many years, Target, United Health Group, Emerson Electric, Weyerhaeuser. I'm kind of surprised by how many Fortune 500 companies I've now, as I rewind and say that I've worked at, which I'm just so grateful to have worked at those companies, and now to do the coaching is the work that I'm leaning into, and that just gives me a lot of satisfaction.
Excellent. I love it. Talk to, your journey. Like, how did you get to the point of wanting to be a coach and help other leaders?
As Steve Jobs says, you'll only connect the dots backwards. And so it's easier for me now as I look in the rearview mirror than it was maybe at the time living through it. But I think in a lot of ways, I've always been a coach. And I know my wife would say that she's noticed that throughout the years. We've been together for almost 30 years now, and um, the pathway there really was one about as a kid loving the technology. I got the computer science degree as well as a music degree. So as you mentioned, I've got multiple passions in my life, which I'm really pleased about and really thrilled to have. And um, as I worked throughout. My career in technology. First, building systems, then doing project management, and then doing team management. I just really gained an appreciation for what technology could do. And it's great that technology, of course, has been more and more integrated in amazing ways over the years. We have C-level positions, obviously the CIO, the CTO, who are driving things in a much more direct way than they used to. And it was great to be able to lead some of those initiatives, for example, at Target and United Health Group and elsewhere. Um, but my journey is one of appreciating all that, and really finding out where my passions and loves were about leading those teams and helping the individuals thrive and really lean into what they're passionate about. It was one of my thrills. I'll just give a specific example of having people on my team, for example, that maybe were, let's just say, middle of their careers, but I loved working with people new in their careers or very, very experienced, and being able to have a conversation with them and really hold space for them, as we say in coaching, and listen to what are you passionate about? Where would you like to go? And as a leader, often because there's that power differential, people who report to you will sometimes just be very much in the pleasing mode about like, well, let me just tell you where I'm at on these projects. We've got this problem, but I promise I'll take care of it, right? And just be able to slow them down a little bit and breathe and be like, yeah, I know you got it, right? Now let's talk a little bit more about you. What else would you really like to
Yeah.
do and lean into? And then it was my honor, my thrill to be able to help those folks, yes, perhaps stay in my team another 1 or 2 years or whatever it was, but then find another role perhaps in an organization or in some cases outside the organization that was even a better fit for their passions and skills and where they wanted to go. That like just still to this day gives me chills to be able to do that for folks.
Yeah, so you were really like, even when you had the direct responsibility, you were coaching, which is what most
Mm,
leaders should do. But I think we sometimes forget how important it is to be
yeah.
human, right? And show up and truly get to know your team
Yes,
members.
100%, right? And we know this, I think, intuitively, but it bears repeating. When we show up authentically and vulnerably, we give others unconscious permission to do the same, right? And so that's been part of my journey is to be more and more myself, if you will. And I've noticed it tends to help others do the same and vice versa.
Yeah, and it's well, and I know you had joined us and helped facilitate like on our
Mhm.
last boot camp, but we went through the E3
Mhm.
leadership profile, right? And that is really a tool where we help leaders start to understand who they are,
Yes.
right? Because I think people talk to, they see you and I and they're like, oh, you're so open, you're so vulnerable, you're willing to put yourself out there so much. But that takes practice. It doesn't happen overnight,
Yes.
right? And, when you first, do you recall, and I'm going to throw this out there, I don't even know, when you realized that you needed to be vulnerable first to help others
Oh,
be
what a great
vulnerable
question. Look
also?
at you with your coaching chops. That's like a $10 question right there, Kathy. Um, Boy, what would I say? I mean, the short and honest answer is it was kind of a slow burn over time, I think, honestly. But but I will tell you one specific moment where I know it was an aha moment. Um, and it was related to this. As you know, a little over 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And that was such a life-changing experience for me. For me, my wife, our 3 kids were still in middle school at the time, and there was, as you can imagine, just really, um, I feel like I experienced that as a near-death experience, but in slow motion. It's like, whoa, my life might be over soon. What's important to me now? What's not important to me? And part of what I realized through that journey was, okay, uh, my family. I just want to be a daddy. I just want to be a husband and stay with my wife. And if I could possibly get through this cancer journey enough, I want to lean more into coaching. I just know that I want to do that. And so I found myself being an unexpected public speaker when somebody a senior leader in Target Corporation reached out to me and said, I think you should be part of this event called, it was something like We Are Us or This Is Us or Who We Are or something like that. And I'm like, okay, sure, I'll share my story. And as I was preparing to like do my, I mean, I've spoken to my teams before and stuff, but this was like this was the entire Target Corporation supply chain organization. So
Wow.
humongous, right?
Yep.
And so suddenly I thought it was going to be like 7 people, like, yeah, we all share a little bit of our story. Then I'm like, well, it's actually going to be you and the senior vice president of the whole organization. You're the two speakers, and I'm opening for you. I'm like,
My gosh.
great. Okay. How much do I share and how much I don't? And I just realized in preparing for that, Kathy, that I was like, as I was just getting clear with myself, and what's in my heart, like, no, I'm going to share this. And I shared some really vulnerable stuff from my past. That I hadn't told maybe anybody before, besides my wife. And um, when I did that public speaking event, um, I shared it all. I remember somebody, one of my coworkers came up to me who had never seen me do that. And he's like, what are you not doing on the inspirational public speaking circuit? Like, that was amazing. And then I remember as I'm going home, I have what Brene Brown calls the vulnerability hangover, right? Where I was like, what the hell did I just do? Like, why did I tell all my coworkers my life history? What, for what purpose? Like, oh, I'm so like exposed, like this is never going to work out. And then just overnight, I remember coming into work the next morning and I just suddenly had this new confidence moment where I'm like, you know what? I've shared everything. Like, I have held back nothing from all my coworkers. And it wasn't in like a, ha ha, I did that and you didn't, but rather like a, whew, like I have nothing to hide. And I realized that by me doing that, it gave me a new freedom.
Mm.
And probably won't surprise you, I had a number of people reach out to me one on one after that saying, oh, I would just like kind of like I want what he's having. Like, would you help coach me, or I want to share something. People shared me their very, very vulnerable stories one on one. And I'm like, oh, that is part of the magic. Like, that I believe just strongly, that's part of why I'm still here, is to be able to share all of that very honestly, very vulnerably, so that others can do the same and we can all learn from each other.
Yeah, I mean, so Ralph's sharing, wow, that took guts. Absolutely.
Mm.
And I mean, it is not easy. But when you start to realize that so many people live in fear,
Yes.
right? They're fearful of someone taking advantage of them or telling something too intimate, or I might get fired if I
Mm.
tell them that I'm taking care of a sick child or a sick parent, and they'll think I can't
Right.
do the job. But in reality, that actually creates a closer relationship, that you can work better with your boss and your organization, because then they'll have to help.
Yes. Oh, so true. And it takes guts to do anything like that. I mean, some people are saying, "Oh, I couldn't share my story publicly," but just like you say, every little bit of like, can I share that, this is the medical situation that my kid is going through or I'm going through? Can I share that or not? It takes guts every time we do that. And the good news is, it my experience has been, it does get easier as you go. Now that I've just decided to live my life as pretty much an open book, it's just the way I roll. It's my MO now. And it's not that I'm going to
Yeah.
lead with, by the way, let me tell all my coaching clients in the first meeting, I'm a stage 4 cancer survivor. I don't lead with that. But if I sense it's going to be in service of them or of me, I will go there. And so I think that's maybe some good news that perhaps some of your listeners could take away from this, is that um, edging just a little bit more into vulnerability does make a difference for you and others, and it does get easier the more you do it.
Yeah, and I think, when I look at leadership styles and how people show up, I think people often they think there's a
Mm,
mold. They think that all the best leaders are extroverts, and they're very to the point, and they don't stop to think and worry about people, and that is absolutely not the
right?
case. And it's about being authentic and showing up as yourself and being able to bring your whole self to the table.
Hmm. So true.
So
And
I think,
yeah,
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, I've been thinking about that lately, authenticity and vulnerability related, but yet separate, and one point I think is worth making is that um, when someone's being authentic, we may or may not like that, you know, like it may even trigger us, you know. But if
Mm,
that person is, whether it's they maybe they overshared something about their family, they're like, I don't want to go there, or maybe they are like a super bold type A personality leader, and you're an introvert, and you're like, okay, maybe they're being authentic, but not for me. That's
yeah,
okay, right? Just notice that, as we would say in coaching, and just to be aware of that is a person being authentic, not my taste, not my style, but I can appreciate that they are being authentic, you
yeah.
know, and that can allow you to be authentic perhaps as well when you notice that, and even noticing the triggers or whatever it is, right? To just be, I think it can lead us toward more of a like, yep, you do you, I'll do me, and together we've got this, maybe wild and crazy diverse team that we're all bringing our strengths and our authenticity to the table.
Yeah, I love it. So Ralph actually has a good question. So how do you figure out that difference between honest, helpful, vulnerable disclosure and then how much is TMI? Is there a boundary?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, short answer, my opinion, right? There is a boundary,
Yeah.
and we all need to figure that out for ourselves, right? That's the bad news is that there's no, of course, built-in, template that we all can follow. But again, back to practice doesn't necessarily make perfect, but practice, what's the phrase I prefer? Practice makes habit, practice makes comfort.
Like that.
And um, I found that for me at least is that here's what I do. Again, just personal reflection on it is that nowadays, if I'm in some sort of meeting and it's with folks I haven't met before, um, I just do a little bit of kind of checking in with myself, you know.
Mm,
And for me, sometimes, I can, as my counselors help me actually, checking in with my body, like where do I feel that, like, yeah, I think it might be useful here where I could share that, or maybe you feel it in your heart, or you're thinking it through, but don't overthink it. I would say that pretty directly. If you overthink it, you're probably just not going to share it. You know,
yeah.
and that's, as you say, that's kind of the default mode for us in business. Like, oh no, right, like you say, the fear, right, comes in. If you think it too much, you're going to be like, oh no, I can't share that, right? But if you can start to lean into your heart, which I know, that I love about the E3 materials that you've built are about that, or lean into your body even, and just that's what I do these days. Is I'm just like, I know my story and I'm free to share it. I'm sharing it with strangers right now, right? And if I'm meeting a group for the first time, I'll just be kind of like, yeah, here's my quick and dirty story, right? And then somebody else might share somebody else. And then if I sense it's going to be in use for the group, I will just share. Or I had it happen the other day where um, a trusted friend was on the meeting with me, and we were as a fellow coaches, we were all meeting for the first time. And I said, yes, here's my coaching style. I tend to lean into authenticity, resilience on the way to confidence, ARC, the ARC framework that I'm building out. And she was on the call. And so a couple after I finished, she's like, oh, and is there anything about your story that maybe leads you toward that authenticity, resilience, and confidence? So I'm like, well, yes, actually, I'm a stage 4 cancer survivor, and this was this, right? So sometimes others who know us can help hold us accountable, if you will, to
Yeah.
getting the vulnerability meter right, I think. But I think checking in with yourself first and practicing it, it will get easier over time.
Yeah, I think there's so much there, to unpack. One of the things I think also is setting the intent with others. When people
Mm,
understand what your intention is,
mm,
then when you show up and they might think, oh, you're sharing too much information. If you've set the groundwork of, hey, this is who I am, I have a tendency, I'm an open book. I love to share. This is who I am. Then you're
yeah,
setting that intention of that they realize that you're not making this up, right? And that you're not showing up
yeah,
inauthentically, right? And just trying to get someone's opinion. And I think that's so important when we think through it. And also asking for help. You don't have to do that alone. So if vulnerability is something that you struggle with, to your point, you can ask people to help you bring things out if you want to talk
yeah.
about it. And you feel like, well, I don't feel comfortable bringing up, but if you think it's appropriate, then I'll leave it to you to introduce it at the right time.
I love what you said about intention, Kathy. I think there's so much to that. We're familiar, many of us, with the acronym WAIT. Why am I talking? It could be a waste. Why am I sharing? But to ask yourself that question just internally, again, it gets easier over time, I sense. But to ask yourself, why do I want to share this? Like, to be blunt, do I want to share this because I want somebody to feel sorry for me? Um, that might be a little more, ego over essence, as we say. You might be wanting to kind of play the victim role, and right. Or if you ask yourself, why am I sharing? Or why do I sense I want to share? Well, because I sense they might have a story to tell, and maybe if I share a little, they'll share a little. Okay, that might be a little less of an
Yeah.
ego reason to do it, right? But asking yourself, what is my intention? Just like you said, I think that's a very great way in.
Yeah. And when I think about it, Andy, I mean, we're talking, we like jump right into vulnerability because this is where you
Right.
and I are very comfortable. But if we go back to why are we even suggesting this? It really goes back to trying to help organizations, teams or even individuals get stuff
Mm-hmm.
done. Right. And if you think back to your days of leading through technology, being a project manager, you know, is this what the coaching and why you brought that personal side out with people when you were
Mm-hmm.
talking about it? Was it really to help them engage more and to really execute against what you needed them to be
Mm-hmm.
focusing on?
Yeah, that was a big part of it, for sure. I mean, what I noticed early in my career, is that when people feel good about themselves, they do good work. It's so surprisingly simple, um, but I think it's really true. And of course, it's not to say that as leaders, we don't have to sometimes give a really hard message that somebody doesn't want to hear, right? I don't mean it's all just about, sunshine and fairy tales, right? You don't just gloss over stuff. As a leader, we have to sometimes even let people go and give them very tough messages they don't want to hear. And if it can be all in service of or in purpose of helping that person embrace the truth more about themselves, whether it's a tough message or an encouraging message, then that's golden, right? Then you're on the path to
Yep.
embracing their humanity. What's true for them? What's true for the organization? Where do you want to go? Where does the team want to go? And then suddenly, you've got a kind of almost a self-selecting team. It's like, oh yeah, I want to be here because I believe in Andy as a leader. I believe in the mission that we're accomplishing. Let's go, right? Then you get that synergy
Yep.
together, which is so powerful.
Yeah. And you've used a word a number of times in our conversation already is
Mm,
serving, and will this serve how am I going to use this? Is it needed? That word, first of all, I love that word. And that kind of changed my leadership style one day
mm,
when I said, oh, I'm a servant leader, right? To
yeah.
learn what that is and to serve others. But that really does start with
Mm,
awareness,
mm,
and understanding ourselves and figuring out how we're going to show up, how we want others to show up, and how do we really motivate them. To your point, like I was talking to someone recently about feedback and adjusting
mm.
feedback. Now, I'm the person that give me all kind of feedback. I want it. Like I am just of that mindset. But to get other people to understand that all feedback should be considered good,
Mhm.
even if it's adjusting,
Yes.
right? But it goes back to your intent. Am I trying to help you be better? And that's why I'm giving you this feedback and this adjusting
Yes.
feedback.
Yes. Yeah. Feedback truly is a gift. When I was at Target, there was this little short book that got passed around called "Feedback is a Gift," and brilliant little, right? Because you're right. If assuming the intention is good, hopefully it is, right? It's designed to help that individual. And the story that comes to mind I'll share from that book is like, yeah, and feedback is a gift, and sometimes it's kind of like that fruitcake at Christmas, like, oh, I didn't really want that, but and maybe you're just passing that on because somebody told you that feedback earlier. You didn't want the fruitcake either, so you're giving it to me, right? Sometimes that happens, right? But if, to your point, we can assume positive intent, which I think is really important too, right?
Mm,
That this leader is giving me some tough feedback. Let's not make up a story about them trying to, they already hate me or whatever, but assume that they're intending to improve me, right? Right? And nobody shows up to work wanting to do a bad job, right? Assume positive intent by the employee or the individual, right? If we can assume a positive intent on each side, then we'll be able to, frankly, weed out the crap of like, oh, that's the feedback that's really not helpful. Thank you so much, though, right? But then take the feedback that is actually helpful and move forward with positive intent for the sake of ourselves and the team.
I love that. The assume positive intent is one of my favorite phrases. And we're also often talking about no one wakes up with bad intent,
Yeah.
right? So if someone is not acting the way you would expect them to, or, in a negative way, what else is going on? It's our job is to explore, right? What's happening underneath that water line? Because all of our feet are under the water. There's a lot more happening, and we can only see the tip of the
Right.
iceberg,
So
right?
true. So true. You're right. It's just the tip of the iceberg that people typically bring to work. And as leaders, if we can, if the individual is willing, if we as the leaders can encourage it, boy, there's so much more richness in, of course, not only humanity, but yeah, to, like you said a couple of minutes ago, getting the actual work done, right? Like one of my leaders gave me a short compliment that I didn't realize how big it was to me at the time, but she said, you're good at building healthy teams. And I'm like, oh, and so it's taken me a couple of years, but I'm ready to own that. Like I am good at building healthy teams. And now I have the honor of helping other leaders build healthy teams. And it's so much of what we're talking about today, Kathy, I think, about that vulnerability, the authenticity, the leveraging each other's strengths, the feedback, appreciating that and positive intent really does help.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about the world we live in today and getting things done, we can't get things done without people.
Right.
And you can try an authoritative way to do it, and it works. There are times, and I know this, that in crisis, in a short time frame, you need to be very direct and matter of fact and authoritative, right? But it works for a very short period of time. And what you really want is people showing up for you on your team and doing things you didn't even ask them to do because they already know what they should be doing, and they want to engage, and they want to help and support, right? That's the ultimate goal of what we're trying to do and deliver results.
Yes. Oh, 100%. When you see that intrinsic motivation happen, not just the extrinsic, right? When that person is just motivated and they truly start, to use the corporate language, they start exceeding expectations, right? That's like, I think when the magic has started to happen, as you were just illustrating, like, oh, they are intrinsically motivated. They want to be here. They are just knocking it out of the park. They're hitting on all the cylinders. That's when the magic really starts to happen and build on itself.
Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of, where we've been going with the E3 leadership code, right? Is making sure you express that end vision, because then if you got everyone on board, right, then they know where they need to go when you're not giving them directions,
Yes.
right? Like, oh, well, you know what? I just found a short path to get to our end goal. So I feel empowered to go take that path and make sure that we're succeeding quicker to all of that. So, Andy, believe it or not, we're almost at the bottom of the hour. This is how fast this time goes. Yeah. So, when you think about our audience and you think about leaders at different journeys, at different stages of their journey, some younger, some more mature, what advice do you have for someone really stopping to think about how to show up the most authentically that they can and really help drive change?
Showing up authentically and driving change. Yeah. Well, two things I'd say about it. Number one is to drive change, know what change you want to drive. And I'm, appreciate, for example, in the E3 leadership, defining that vision in the Express, as a leader of mine said many, many years ago, it stuck with me. Give the team the gift of your expectations. That truly, like feedback, the expectations are a gift as well, right? Like don't keep them to yourself, because then you're just kind of hoping that they're mind readers, right? So as a leader, give them the gift of your expectation. This is what I expect. What I want us to achieve this year is this, right? So that's part one, an important part. The equally important part, as you mentioned about the authenticity, is that I would say the first thing is check in with yourself. Like how authentic and vulnerable have I been, or am I ready to be? just really be honest with yourself. Um, Maybe you're, way in this vulnerability perspective, maybe you're not. Any place is okay. And I would just say, you know, if you want to become a little bit more authentic or share a little bit more authentically or share a little bit more boldly, start small. Start with just you don't have to suddenly share your life story in front of the entire division like I did, right? You can start with a very small thing and maybe start with somebody who you trust on your team. And yeah, maybe this is a very specific idea, but maybe it comes up with some ideas for others, is the idea of think about somebody on your team who you suspect might be willing to share, or maybe it would be in service of them to share something about what's going on. Maybe you just suspect, boy, something might be going on at home. What is that? And maybe have a one-on-one with that person and think about something in your life that you'd be willing to share, that you trust them enough that, I got this going on. Maybe it's something you're struggling with. Like they say, every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Everybody, right? So think about a battle you're fighting that you might be willing to share a little bit about, and then I bet anything that person that you're thinking about would be willing to share a little bit more. And when you start to see that, I'll call it magic again, happen, or that humanity happen, that's just the gift that does keep on giving. And I think we all can step one step forward and see the results, and that just helps everybody.
Yeah, that is great advice. And you just brought a story back. There was a colleague I once had, and we were struggling. We were butting heads. And I was just like, I know she's got a lot to offer, but she's not listening to me. We are on two different pages. We went out and had dinner one night. And I started to learn more about, you're on your second marriage. I'm on my second marriage. We started to find commonality between us. And suddenly I'm like, oh, she's pretty similar to me. Oh, wait a minute. And so that next day at work was a whole different world.
Wow.
Because now I knew a lot more that was going on. And it does make a difference, right? We got to show up as humans, because sometimes our actions and our behaviors they're not perceived the way we intended them to be. And so it's about getting to know each other and understanding, oh, that's why she said that, or that's why.
What a beautiful and perfect story. I love that. Great example, Kathy. Yeah.
Thanks for bringing it back. I mean, you've inspired me with all these different.
Love it.
Well, Andy, thank you so much. We could talk for hours, and we have spoken for hours. But I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So thank you so much for joining, and I hope we'll have you back soon in the future, and you can share some more nuggets and guidance for everyone, because you have so much to share and offer. So
You're welcome. This was my thrill, and it's just such an honor to be with you. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. And for everyone else that has joined us, thank you so much for being here. And, the challenge for you each today is really to stop and think about who might you not have that relationship and you want to, and really go see what you can do about creating a personal relationship with them, and perhaps even break through that barrier of why you weren't working great together. And if you want to, learn more about E3 and our leadership code, or the E3 leadership profile that we've talked about, we have a boot camp happening at the end of the month. We have a lunch and learn also that will be completely geared to authenticity. And if anyone is on the job hunt and looking for new roles and really want to align your next role with your values, your purpose, we're doing a special edition next week to help those open to a new role, and helping you ask some key questions to find your zone of genius and to network with others. And that is a free event, and please share with your audience as well, because we really want to help everyone find their next role. So thanks, everyone, and we'll talk to you next week. Take care.